topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to the Bill Martinez Show. Great to have you with us, sharing a part of your day. You know, 9/11 will always be one of those days etched in our memories. The sights, sounds, smells, and heartbreak lingers 22 years later, right? There'll be memories marking the day along with never again sentiments. How should America be responding over 2 decades later? Well, Eric Caron, the former U.S. diplomat and special agent and author of the book Switched On, is with us to talk about what he witnessed as he was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. He shares what we know now versus what we knew then. Eric Caron, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
An honor to be on with you on this somber day that, in my opinion, did not have to happen.
Well, Eric, you were there in D.C. and you had shared with me that even prior to 9/11, there was a lot of chatter going on. There was something in the wind that was leading people to be, to have their guard up, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think we need to look back first. And that Osama bin Laden, we had a chance to take him out in Sudan, and we did not. He left Sudan, went to Afghanistan, and built his terror organization. And then we had, of course, the attacks on our embassies in Kenya and in Tanzania as well. 200 Americans died. And then what? We had the USS Cole attack.
Exactly. And
we still did nothing. And that's the problem, is that these bad guys will continue to kill and destroy whoever gets in their way. And prior to 9/11, Bill, I was in D.C. and I was a program manager, terrorism program manager. So I saw some of the threat chatter, if you will, before 9/11.
Right.
And I have to tell you that the attitude, for the most part in the U.S. government, was, hey, we're the big dogs, big dog. Nobody will come to America and hurt us.
Right.
And we had this arrogance about us. And then, of course, we had interagency fighting going on as far as intelligence sharing. And so when 9/11 happened, I was off that day, walked into a Barnes and Noble with my 2 sons, and I heard the chatter, like, did you hear what happened? A plane hit the Trade Center.
Wow.
And as soon as I heard it, believe it or not, Bill, I blocked it out. And I was with my 6-year-old son, and I went in the back of the Barnes and Noble. I sat down with him and I read, and I knew exactly what had happened. And, and I knew my life would change from that moment on. And once I left that Barnes and Nobles, I was getting ready to go to work. And so 9/11, Bill, was a preventable attack, but our elected officials were more concerned with globalization, if you will, than keeping us safe.
Right. Now, when you say they were more interested in globalization, certainly we've been moving to this, globalistic adherence and governance, kind of a one world government. We've been moving in that direction for quite a while. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Bill. Yeah, absolutely. So for several decades, we've been moving to globalization, and we're there now. And that, globalization in some respects, right, it can be good, but we need the adults in the room to keep the lid on things. What do I mean by that? Bad guys, terrorists, will exploit, as they did on 9/11, 3 T's: trade, travel, telecommunication, for their benefits.
Right.
So the criminal groups, terror groups, will exploit shipping containers. They will exploit getting on an airplane. They will exploit the internet for their criminal enterprises. So our government turned a blind eye to security as it is today. And that's what's happening today. We've turned a blind eye to all the threats that's coming to America, i.e. our southern border.
Right.
I.e. the shipping containers that come into America, over 50 million shipping containers that come into the U.S. yearly. And so ports of entry, there's 328 ports of entry, Bill. Right. They all have to be secure because bad guys go where it's soft. Exactly. And we're very soft right now. Just look at the Middle East and look at Africa. It's on fire.
Well, Eric, as we're talking right now, there's a report of 32 wars or conflicts happening around the world right now. And it's just a matter of time before, of course, certainly with you talk about being soft, our southern border is the epitome of softness right now, right?
It is, absolutely. I mean, there's any guesstimate how many millions of people have come in. You get 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. Nobody really knows, but we do know what? We know that some of those millions are criminals. We know some of those are terrorists or associated terrorists coming to harm us. There's over 1,000 joint terrorism task force cases going on today, Bill, across this country. There are bad guys here. I've seen the bad guys. I've seen them. I've sat across the table from them. I've seen images of the people, as we all have, of people dying at the hands of terrorists. And you meant Africa right now. There's 21 shadow wars going on with the U.S. government, special forces, AFRICOM in Africa. Mm-hmm. Niger fell, Chad, Mali, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These countries are falling and they're being overtaken by extremists. Mm-hmm. And people, I think, Bill, I don't think we've learned our lesson. And I'm sorry to say that we continue to think what happens in Africa or the Middle East won't affect us.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't stay there. I think we've learned the hard way, but Eric, is part of the problem, I see it, being a Vietnam era vet. Okay, I didn't serve in Vietnam. I served stateside. But it seemed like the psychology of waging war was a time when you had a lot of civilian activity instead of military activity controlling the outcome of the war there. Has that kind of carried through? Is that still at a higher level than it should be even today? And that's what compromises some of our thinking?
Yeah, of course. Our elected officials need to understand their number one job is to keep our butts safe.
Yeah.
You can't have trade and economy, like trade with our partners and flying all over the world and et cetera, et cetera. You can't have prosperity without security.
Exactly.
And so, but our politicians have got it wrong. And we've seen the results. They're afraid, they're timid. Some of the Benghazi attackers are alive and well. They're in Tripoli right now. I've just seen info. They're in Tripoli. They're being given a safe haven by the Lebanese government.
Exactly.
And Libya government. I'm sorry. Yeah. They are. And one just flew to Afghanistan in the last few days. One of the attackers from Benghazi got on a plane and landed in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan, we have the Taliban, as we know,
right,
have all our sophisticated equipment right now. We have Iranians declaring war against Israel and the U.S. We just haven't declared war against them because we have politicians who are timid. And the same thing with the Mexican cartels.
Yes, exactly.
The Mexican cartels run the Mexican government. Mm-hmm. The Mexican government.
And they're in control of our southern border, Eric, for all intents and purposes, right?
Yes, sir. 100%. Yeah. And, I say shut it down. But unfortunately, corporate America is partly to blame because we've outsourced all our products into Mexico.
Right.
The Fords, the GEs, the pharmaceuticals, they're being manufactured in Mexico, and some of those plants are run by the cartels. Those cities and the government is run by the cartel. And so until we get serious, until we take the gloves off, we're going to continue to have death and destruction here in America.
Yeah, unfortunately, to relive another 9/11 is just beyond our imagination. And I think that we're still, you talk about being in shock and awe. I think we're still in shock and awe from it, even though we have a new generation that has since been born that wasn't around during 9/11. They hear some of the horror stories, but and maybe they relate to the the broken hearts around families and still the whenever we talk about 9/11, the horror that's on the faces of their relatives, but they still don't know. It's kind of like when we were growing up and our parents were trying, they not that they really tried to tell us much about World War II, but we knew things about World War II, but we knew it was like one of those subjects that they spoke about silently, or was quite was quiet. It wasn't necessarily an open conversation, but we know that it was hollow in a sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was. But unfortunately, we have a White House, a Democrat Party, who's talking to Sheikh Mohammed, responsible for the 9/11 attacks, along with Osama bin Laden.
Right.
They're talking about sparing him the death penalty. And so that's an example of what I'm talking about. We are weak as a nation, and the bad guys, criminals, international criminals, and terrorists know it. They know that Joe Biden is weak, and our government is weak right now, and it should scare everyone that we have a commander-in-chief that has a problem stringing 3-4 sentences together.
Right. Or even exercising any kind of leadership. I mean, when you think about 2001, what happened here in terms of the vulnerability of America at that point in time? I mean, they had already did a test run in New York, as you know, Eric, and Bill Clinton did little, as you cited earlier. There were times again when we should have responded and we didn't, and They saw us as being soft, and they hit us at a time that we were most vulnerable. And we're so vulnerable on so many areas. Even our military had been downgraded during that period of time. And it's almost shades and memories of where we are today.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Our police departments across America are weak. Police departments across America cannot fill the vacancies fast enough.
Right.
And the same thing at the federal level.
How are they going to, Eric? I mean, you got local communities with this defund police effort, and they malign the police. The police go ahead and they take, those that could afford to do it, took early retirement and decided, heck, who needs to be around this kind of environment that you're going to lose your pension? Everything that you've invested is going to be flushed down the toilet. And, and now these cities are going, whoa, wait a minute, no, we didn't mean defund. We want to refund police. Let's get them. We're going to, put new funding in there. And like what? You think you're going to be able to go to like a Costco warehouse and go to aisle 13 and find 25-year veteran police officers ready to come back? Forget it.
Yeah. And that's the same thing at the federal level. CBP, Secret Service, FBI, and most of those agents, most of the federal law enforcement agencies are having a difficult time filling the void because nobody wants to put on that badge and gun and be crucified for making an honest mistake. I mean, we're not robots.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we're willing to die for you, someone we don't even know, but please support us.
Exactly.
Please give us the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And when we do something wrong, of course, hold people accountable, but don't crucify us. Don't crucify every good police officer, law enforcement officer in America, because now we have this almost an anarchy across America right now.
Exactly.
And,
Crime is through the roof, and and here it is. We've got this culture in our country that disrespects law enforcement, And then, as if that's not bad enough, let's bring all these illegal immigrants into the country that are flooding the system.
Yep.
And then in these blue states, in these cities that they don't want to, keep people in jail. There's no bail reform
Right.
that allows them to get back on the street right away. And then look what's happening.
It's like a 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah.
And they're not hiding it. This is not like a sucker punch. These people, the Democratic Party, they're coming at us and they're telling us what they're doing. They're telling us we're going to, get in your schools and educate your children the way we want to educate them. And we're going to take over your nation. And we're going to open the borders. And because, the white Americans, if you will, and I've been told this by gangbangers, hey, you know what? We're taking your city over. We're taking your country over. You know why? Because we don't just have 1 or 2 kids like most Americans. We have 4, 5, 7 kids.
Right.
And we're going to take over your town. And the Muslim extremists do the same thing in the Middle East. They're doing the same thing. They're harvesting babies, actually, for that purpose. And so if we don't have good people, if we don't support good men and women of law enforcement, they will take off the uniform. And I'm telling you, and we've already seen it, police departments, local, state, and federal will lower the standards, and they will be forced to hire not very good officers. Yeah. And in some cases, maybe even associated BLM members. I'm waiting for the day that some liberal mayor has a press conference and is proud that their first police academy is filled with representatives of BLM. I'm waiting for it.
Well, look at the craziness they're doing with Elon Musk. They got on him because he wasn't going to hire illegal immigrants in a space program that has highly sensitive material and information. Eric, I mean, this is how crazy this has become, right?
It absolutely is. You just reminded me, I led a mass undercover operation in Massachusetts, 2007-8, where myself and members of the team, we arrested 361 illegal aliens at a U.S. defense contractor.
Wow.
In my book, I call it the wicked good investigation. But guess what? It turned out to be a wicked bad case because our politicians, Governor Deval Patrick, Senator Kennedy at the time, John Kerry, et cetera, colluded with the media and immigration NGO groups, and they demonized me. They demonized me, and I was interviewed by congressional investigators, and we had Homeland Security Inspector General investigations, hearings, because we didn't execute properly, and we ripped babies away from mothers. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't this a good thing? We just potentially, have we not learned that terrorists are only limited by their imagination, Bill? Yeah. We have a defense contractor hiring illegal aliens that could sabotage these goods.
Right.
So anybody's interested, you can Google it. It's U.S. versus Michael Bianco, and in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and you'll see the front page articles, and it was in Fox News and CNN, and yep, I was the one in trouble.
Go figure. We're talking with Eric Caron, former decorated special agent who was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. Eric, whatever happened to that contractor?
Well, yeah, he pled guilty. He did plead guilty, did a year in the can, as we say. Some of those illegal aliens were deported. They were criminals. Some of them were criminal illegal aliens. There was a document vendor across the street producing kind of the forged documents for the owner just to keep on file in case he was ever asked. Yes. But everybody knew. The mayor at the time knew what the hell was going on, but everybody turned a blind eye to it. And, the economy in many of our inner cities are hurting. These were good jobs. Yeah. Instead of giving them to good Americans,
right,
they were giving them to illegal aliens. But everybody actually and not even many people on the Republican Party during those years came to my defense. Everybody sat on their hands.
This is amazing. I mean, and as you were talking about before, we've got the movement of the uniparty, and any more people are confused. You can't really count on an R meaning an R anymore. I mean, the D, what a D means is pretty well obvious what they do time and again. And they're backing, Joe Biden's administration that's killing our economy, killing fossil fuels, and rendering us dependent on
killing Americans.
Yeah.
Look at the fentanyl, Bill.
Exactly.
Over 100,000 people die a year. We're talking over 1 million people have died in America since 1999. Well over 1 million people. When are we going to declare war against the cartel?
Exactly. Well, how about China? China is supplying them the ingredients, right?
Right. China. Absolutely. The Chinese are funneling containers full of precursor chemicals to Mexico. I don't know what to say. I mean, Iran is the same thing. Iran is getting precursor chemicals from China for heroin as well. I mean, I know firsthand. I was involved in an operation. We intercepted 14 tons when I lived and worked in Dubai, Bill, and we intercepted 14 tons of a precursor heroin agent going to Iran.
Eric, how does America withstand all this? I mean, it's like we're losing the battle from the inside out. I mean, Joe Biden's at G20 here, and just a couple of days ago, and he's talking about trying to play fair with China. When has China ever played fair with America?
No. It's tragic what's happening right now. It's China, Afghanistan, Russia, Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, most of Africa. It's all on fire. Mm-hmm. And so, Joe Biden surrounding himself with liberals that we didn't elect, who are making the decisions for him because he's not able to. Well, let's face it. Mm-hmm. Mr. President, sign here. Mr. President, sign that. He's not able to really understand the magnitude of, and ask the intelligent questions, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions about a topic. Yeah. And so who's really making the decisions? In my mind, we have unelected officials in the White House executing policies that they should not be executing, but because this president's not able to, that should be, that should scare every American. And I think at the end of the day, Bill, if I have time for this, I think we as a nation need to get switched on.
Yes.
Not to plug the title of my book, but we've lost our way.
Yeah.
We lost our way as as families, as a community, as a nation, because we're not living the core principles that you were taught and I were taught, and that my dad, my Marine Corps father taught me. Mm-hmm. And the 3 core principles of living a switched on life, so vital. Education. It's your ticket to life's party. Without it, you're not getting in, period.
Right.
We're not able to think critically now. Mm-hmm. So education, strengthen the body, sleep, eat, and exercise. We know the importance of sleeping, eating, and exercising every day. There's been hundreds of studies done by folks with all kinds of degrees after their name about sleep and how sleep is vital in eating properly. So sleep, eat, and exercise. And then the third is the soul. Feed the soul through some type of faith, some type of believe in something, for God's sakes. Because, when your father, mother, brother dies, or your cat gets hit by a car, you better have faith to understand the circle of life and understand that we're all connected in this earth. But I think we've lost religion of any sort, of faith.
No doubt.
And so without those 3 things, and they all three things, mind, body, and soul, have to be fed every day or you're off balance. And I can tell you, Bill, if I wasn't switched on, I would be dead today.
Mm. Wow. Well, you're exactly right, Eric. I mean, we on our show we've been talking about returning to first principles, and that's what you're talking about. These first principles that you and I grew up with, that you honor your father with, even to this day, as you pass on his wisdom, to the next generation, and I do the same as well. And for me, the idea of the moral backbone of this country has been so compromised. Our founding fathers, John Adams himself said that our Constitution was designed for only a moral people, a moral and righteous people.
Right.
And so if you take morality out, which you're talking about the soul element, if you take that out of play, well, the Constitution implodes on itself.
Right.
And this is what we're experiencing today, and why we're in such a chaotic position and going, helter skelter, is because we've abandoned those founding principles, and we don't know. We know we're on the wrong track, but I find it quite interesting, Eric. It's like when you ask people, you go, okay, how do you get back on the right track? Well, they look to the government or looking to other things instead of realizing that they are a key component of the answer of getting this country back on track, aren't they?
Absolutely, Bill. It starts as individuals, and we as adults need to educate our children and prepare our children for the future. Just look at our kids and the mental illness and the amounts of suicide that's happening across America.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the amount of school violence every day across America. There's school violence. Why? Because kids aren't switched on. They're adults. Their mom and dads aren't switched on. Mom and dad's not switched on in that they go home, they work. The kid comes home from school. He goes in his room and closes the door for 8 hours. Mom and dad's not paying attention. They're not switched on. The fact that the kid's been in his room for 8 hours watching porn or maybe building, God forbid, a weapon to hurt somebody. We're not switched on as families anymore. And that's part of it, Bill. That's really, I think, it's so basic, but we've lost our way. These core principles are so basic. Listen, I don't have a PhD after my name, but based on my research, my life as an agent and diplomat, living around the world, I looked at it really simply, just those three core principles, the mind, body, and soul, and the importance of feeding them every day, because life is hard. And if you don't feed them, then, you're off balance. I say it's a coat of armor. It's a coat of armor that protects us, not just in our physical world on the street to identify, avoid, and escape threats, but in our emotional world as well. We need to be able to say, you know what? My loved one, my son, my wife, my husband I've noticed he's been drinking too much. And if I'm switched on, I'm going to see a change in behavior. You know what? And I'm not going to wait. I'm switched on, and I'm going to have a conversation with him tonight and tell him, you know what, John, you've been drinking too much. But if I'm not switched on and I'm distracted with all the other pleasures of life, and I'm not strong mentally, physically, emotionally, I'm distracted, then John's going to end up, as an alcoholic, and your marriage is ruined.
Exactly. And your kids are impacted as well. Eric, I would dare say that had we been switched on, COVID that we experienced for 2.5 years would have been a different story, right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. As a nation, well, exactly. Strengthening the mind through education. If we were informed, and we've done our own independent research, and we didn't listen to the bureaucrats in Washington, we would have followed the science independently, because, we can think. We're critical thinkers.
Exactly.
We would have seen that some of what is being said didn't make sense. And it's amazing today how they, refute that. And they realize that, without even apologizing and saying, hey, look, we may have gotten wrong. We may have got ahead of our skis on this. Yeah. We apologize. No, they, still hold to some sort of righteous value of some sort. But meanwhile,
we're not all the better, and we could have. I think what's happening, to your point, Eric, is people are making individual decisions, and though corporately we may not be smarter, individually we're a lot smarter because we're realizing that we live in a free country and that we can make an individual decision for the safety of ourselves and our families, right?
Absolutely. If we're switched on, we can do that.
Yes.
And we don't need the government to do that for us. Mm-hmm. And one thing that George Washington said, Bill, and I have the quote right here in front of me. I want to make sure I get it right.
Right.
Guard against the imposters of pretended patriotism. Mm. Guard against the imposters of pretended patriotism. Because, yes, you're right. During COVID, we had government officials standing up saying, we know what's best for you. You can't go to church. You can't attend funerals. You can't have family get-togethers at Christmas because we know what's best.
Right. Because
we're with the government. We're here to help you. And I think George Washington was warning us about what's happening in America today.
Of course, Ronald Reagan echoed that sentiment as well decades later, right? The scariest words you hear from the government. I'm here from the government, here to help, right? No, that's okay. We've got that covered. Yeah. We're talking with Eric Caron, the former decorated special agent who was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. If we can, let's revisit here at this point, 9/11. So you, when we were talking about it, you're at a Barnes and Noble, you're with your son, and all of a sudden, all this chatter, things that you thought could be imminent are now realized. What goes through your mind at that point, Eric?
It's funny, Bill. I can remember like, oh shoot! I hope I did the right thing. Yeah. I hope I CYA and made the notifications that I had to make when I saw bits and pieces of the puzzle, because that's, intelligence, it's information, and it doesn't really become intelligence until we put it together. Right.
Exactly.
So I had information and I said, gee, I hope I did the right thing because God forbid. And, I did, but unfortunately, as we know today, many in the CIA and the FBI failed to protect us and make the proper notifications to.
Well, like you said, Eric, some of this information was available and they didn't share it across agency lines for whatever reason, for ego or control or whatever. And of course, there were laws after that. President Bush made sure that didn't happen again. But I have this sense that, some old habits are hard to die and that maybe some of those barriers have been reconstructed 22 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it as bad? I would probably say no. But the Department of Homeland Insecurity, I'll call it, was developed, as you know, after 9/11. It was a knee-jerk reaction. The department did not have to be formed, but Bush had to do something for the American people. It was all a PR stunt, in my opinion, to be honest with you. And it's still, we still have a problem today at our land, at our borders, 328 ports of entry, land, air, and sea.
Right.
Would you believe that people coming to America, when they leave, we don't know whether or not they left. Even to today, our computer systems here in America at our land borders, airports, seaports, our system is still somewhat poor when it comes to tracking visitors who come to America and say goodbye and leave. We don't really know they left. And that's what happened on 9/11. Some of these would-be hijackers, they left and they came back to America. Some stayed, overstayed their visas. Right. And we had no way of knowing and tracking them. And so we're still behind the 8 ball. And it's unfortunate. And as you know, ICE, responsible for enforcement in the interior, tracking illegal aliens, they have a heck of a job now because the floodgates have been opened. We used to talk about 10 million people, 12 million illegal aliens being here. Now it's 50 plus million.
See, you think the number's that high, 50? I thought it was well over 30, but you think over 50?
Oh yeah, no. I mean the numbers. I mean, I mean that's just the land. No one's looking at shipping containers that come into America. 50 million shipping containers come into America. You want to guess how many are looked at? Opened, like 1%.
Yeah, it's got to be impossible. And then here we are realizing all the sex trafficking that's taking place, and we see how victims are being transported in these containers.
Absolutely, every day across America, containers come to America, and some, don't ask me percentage, but some of those containers have men, women, and children in them, besides cocaine. And my fear is a WMD agent, because I know that Al-Qaeda for sure, and it's been documented, was talking about using shipping containers to import WMD agents into America via shipping containers. And we are not doing enough in the area of border security. Border security is national security, full stop. Exactly. And Joe Biden has been a gift to the Mexican cartels. They love Joe Biden.
You think?
They're making billions of dollars.
Between them and OPEC and Venezuela, Russia, they love Joe Biden very good to Chinese as well.
Absolutely. And the cartels of making billions of dollars in the area of not just drugs, but like, as you mentioned, human trafficking. When you look at each person, on average, you're looking at between $5,000 to $8,000 a person to get them across on average.
Yeah.
And it depends. Sometimes it depends, maybe the country of origin. Like if you're from Iran or Iraq, your price might go up a little more because it's that much harder. We know that those individuals from those countries disguise themselves as Mexicans to get into the U.S. or try to get into the U.S. We know that just last month, Uzbekistanis,
yes,
they crossed. They came to America, and we later learned, it was reported in the Wall Street Journal, Bill, that they had ties to the smuggling group, had ties to ISIS, the Islamic State. So, we have to be right all the time. They just have to be right once. And
well, they're overwhelming the system. There's no way that border control can keep up with it all, regardless of Joe Biden's special, app that you get. I mean,
Kamala Harris, she's on the job.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Has she been to the border yet?
No, she lost her map. Either that, or she's trying to get there with an EV. And there's not enough charging portals between DC and the border to get her all the way to the southern border, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, and you're right. As far as today's concerned, Bill, we still have, infighting going on between agencies. We still have poor border crossing computer systems that are not tracking visitors who we think left, but we really don't know, because like, as you know, in Europe and in Africa, believe it or not, when you enter, you get stamped in, and you basically, when you leave, you got to go through outbound inspection as well. Here, you don't do that. There's no outbound. Hey, I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You try and get out, try and leave Israel without getting outbounded, right?
Exactly. And so here, I don't know. I don't know. We can put men on the moon, but we can't develop a computer system that tracks visitors.
Yeah, you got to have a desire. They have no desire, because unfortunately, every humanoid serves a different greedy interest that some of these are taking full advantage, whether we're talking about NGOs, you're talking about corporate America, like these businesses you're talking about that are hiring people on the cheap, replacing Americans, with cheap labor. I mean, this is, we need to be serious about this. And, the way I look at it, Eric, is that, the blood of slain Americans is on the hands of all these people participating in breaking the law, because in every state of the union, we've had at least one citizen who has been murdered at the hands of an illegal immigrant.
Amen. These officials should be held accountable. Mm-hmm. These our elected officials, again, Bill, their number one job is to keep us safe, and many of them are failing us. They get up and give nice speeches how they support the men and women of law enforcement. They really don't.
Right. No, that's clear that it is puffery, and we measure it and see it for what it's worth, because look at the results. Because if they really did and they're really serious about it, then we wouldn't have the increasing crime problem. Whether you're a blue state or a red state, but particularly, of course, what's happening in these blue states and these blue cities. It's just disgusting. I feel for these families, Eric, like we were talking about, these kids that can't go to the local park for fear that they may be shot while they're on a playground.
Yeah, look at him in Chicago. It's like Kabul. I mean, it's like some weekends, 25 to 50 shootings a weekend.
And it's like, matter of fact, it's like we're almost numb. Like when we used to get the casualty reports out of Vietnam, right?
Yeah,
they just became numbers, and that's the way it is. After every weekend, they give you a body count of how many people were shot, how many were murdered in Chicago, and it's just like, okay, all right, next.
And then what? The politicians want to play politics, because that's what they do best, and say, okay, it's not, if you will, a society, their moms or dads or poor choices. No, we're going to blame the gun. It's the guns.
Well, yeah.
We're going to go after, that's the good talking point. And I'm like, will you, stop playing politics with people's lives?
Exactly.
Both the dead and the living. Come on.
Well, look what's going on in New Mexico. The New Mexico governor decided for 30 days, emergency authorization, taking all guns you cannot carry around Albuquerque for 30 days. And she even said, she goes, well, I know this may not help, but meanwhile, she's risking the security, speaking of national security, but risking the security and safety of New Mexicans. That's insane.
Right. And, and you've heard the analogy, reference the UK, Bill. Mm-hmm. They have no guns allowed in the UK. It's very, very strict policies of ownership of weapons in the UK. But people are dying at the hands of what? Knives.
Knives, yeah. Yeah.
So the gangbangers on the street and thugs are killing people with knives, not guns. So come on, let's just be honest about this issue relating to the violence across America. The violence across America is due to many reasons, but our education system has a role to play in this. Our border security certainly has a role to play in it, because we're letting gangbangers who are 21 become students in our high schools.
Yeah.
And so border security, our education system, and of course our moms and dads need to step up to the plate as well. But
and in some of these areas, Eric, as you know, fatherlessness is the latest pandemic, and it's been going on for decades. But this has had a tremendous impact in minority communities where the father is not participating. And as Rebecca, Ramaswamy pointed out, that when you were rewarding mothers to not be involved with the fathers, and we're rewarding all the wrong behavior. I mean, this is why you have so much fatherlessness and fathers not participating in the upbringing of their children in these minority communities. It is an all-out disaster.
Well, Bill, would it surprise you to learn that I recently read that America leads the world and fatherlessness.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and we know the results of that. Like you just mentioned, about half, we'll say about half, people in jail and prisons didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
And so, yes, and then, I've said it once, and I was attacked by some LGBTQ saying, well, what are you saying? Mothers can't be fathers? And I'm like, you're missing the point. I mean, the point is boys, young men need that male influence in their lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is not about LGBTQ plus.
Right.
Yes. Moms, females, of course, have a major role to play in the lives of children, especially daughters. But the dads, men, have even higher role to play when it comes to their sons.
Mm-hmm.
And, studies across this nation have shown that
Right.
that the dads need dads. That's part of that's part of the problem. We've become a fatherless society. And here we are, high suicide rates, high alcohol and drug use, because our teens aren't being properly managed, if you will.
Right. Well, the fact of the matter is, Eric, mothers can't be fathers and fathers can't be mothers. I mean, you're putting a round peg in a square hole here.
Yeah.
I mean, God created a male and female for a specific reason, and they need to be in the family unit. They need to participate as a joint venture, each bringing their own expertise and their own God-given design to raising up that child.
Yes.
And mothers are known for nurturing, fathers are known for adventure. And the balance of those two dynamics is what raises a healthy child. I'm oversimplifying, I get that. But the idea is that we each have a role to play in the raising of our children.
Yes.
We've got about 3 minutes left here, Eric, and I just want to turn it over to you in these last 3 minutes to where, again, in reflecting back on this ominous day of 9/11 22 years ago, what we've learned from that day and what we need to do going forward in order to get switched on and to have the America that we know is there and is still possible.
Thanks, Bill, for having me. The world is on fire, and Americans need to understand they should care, because we're all connected now. What happens in Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria, or in Tanzania affects us. We learned that lesson the hard way on 9/11, that bad guys have now the ability through globalization to reach out and touch us.
Exactly.
And so that's why border security is so important. It equals national security. So we want to make sure drugs are not flowing into America as it is right now. Fentanyl. We want to make sure counterfeits are not flowing into America. So when I purchase my pharmaceuticals, they're safe.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that the men and women that come to America to work aren't employed as slave laborers in our restaurants, and they're given a fair salary.
Yeah.
And so right now, our country, unfortunately, Bill, is in disarray. I think the threat level is just as high as it was prior to 9/11. And it's unfortunate. It didn't have to be that way, but all we have to look at is what's happening today. Mm-hmm. Look at Afghanistan. Look at our southern border. Just those two issues alone. We didn't have that prior to 9/11. We have that today. We have a Taliban government with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sophisticated technology, military technology. It's not staying in Afghanistan. They have suicide brigades now in Afghanistan. So this nation, Americans need to get switched on and understand the core principles that will keep us safe. Educate us. Strong mind. Educate yourself. Strong mind through education. It's your ticket to life's party, Bill. Without it, you're not getting in. strengthen the body through sleep, eat, and exercise every day, and strengthen the soul through faith. We need to have the faith to understand that no matter what happens, your father, your brother, your dog dies, you lose your job, you lose your wife, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But we've lost our way when it comes to our faith in religion. And I'm not sure what Americans believe in these days. And so I beg Americans to get switched on, Go to Switched On Life. You can get my book there or on Amazon, Bill.
Exactly. Well, Eric Caron, a 25-year decorated veteran special agent with the Department of Treasury, U.S. Customs, and the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, author of the book Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. Eric, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, God bless, Bill, and thank you for what you do, sir.
You got it. Our thanks to Eric Caron for being with us today. For more information and to be a part of this mighty movement to return to God and to save our country, go to BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and may be gracious unto you and give you peace. Thank you so much for being with us. God bless.